The case of Adnan Syed is a very popular case that keeps being talked about ever since his sentencing in 2000 for the murder of his ex-girlfriend, Heyman Lee. This occurred in 1999. 14 years later, this case became much more popular for being the hit subject of the Serial podcast.
Serial.
Apple calls Serial the most popular podcast in the world.
The Serial podcast made this case gain so much attention for the many inconsistencies in his prosecution. The podcast does a very good job at bringing attention, explaining this case, and keeping the attention of the listener. The podcast also shows how there are several sides and stories to this case, some that are not very clear, just like any other court case. Determining if one is innocent is much more difficult than being guilty. However, there is evidence that suggests that Adnan Syed is innocent and does not deserve to be sentenced to life in prison. The problems with the sentencing is that it is not clear or makes much sense for him to be guilty, because Adnan does not remember much of what happened that day. Two alibis had to speak of what happened. The first alibi, Asia McLean, who went to the same high school as Adnan and Hay. She claimed to have seen Adnan in the library at the time of Hay's death. This is major evidence that he could not have killed Hay, since it is impossible to be in two places at once. Adnan left the building at 2:40 and Hay was dead at 2:36.
Lee. I was sitting in the library bored to tears, and someone walked in that I knew. I asked him about his breakup with Hay. She was dating someone else, but that he just wanted her to be happy. He didn't seem to be disturbed or angry with her.
In the library, they talked about the breakup that happened between Adnan and Hay. Asia says that he took the breakup in a mature way and did not show any negative emotion or thought of harming Hay in any way. Adnan was not the type of person to kill anyone because of anger or jealousy. He simply took the breakup like any other high school student would.
Adnan was an EMT, but he didn't volunteer. He was paid for it. He was on the track team, but he wasn't a star. He did play football, and he did lead prayers on occasion. He wasn't homecoming king, but he was prince of his junior prom, and this at a high school that was majority black. They picked a Pakistani Muslim kid. So you get the picture. He was an incredibly likable and well-liked kid.
Now, why would such a good kid, who was well-liked, smart, and participated in many great things, want to ruin their whole life? Asia sent 2 letters to Adnan at the beginning of his sentencing. The first letter was sent March 1st, 1999, one day after Adnan was arrested. The next letter she sent was the next day, March 2nd, 1999. The second letter, she caught Adnan up on what was happening at school, at Adnan's house, and what was circling around.
The first letter, the first of 2, is dated March 1st, 1999. That is one day after Adnan was arrested. At the top of the letter, she notes, "I just came from your house an hour ago. Dear Adnan," I hope I spelled it right. "I'm not sure if you remember talking to me in the library on January 13th, but I remembered chatting with you." She says, quote, "We aren't really close friends, but I want you to look into my eyes and tell me of your innocence. If I ever find otherwise, I will hunt you down and whip your ass. Okay, friend?" At the bottom, she added a little note. "My boyfriend and his best friend remember seeing you there, too."
There are also 2 notes which said,
Asia plus boyfriend saw him in library, 2:15 to 3:15. Then there's another note, dated July 13th. It's more than 4 months after Adnan's arrest. This is written by one of Gutierrez's law clerks who visited Adnan in jail. Quote, "Asia McLean saw him in the library at 3. Asia boyfriend saw him too. Library may have cameras."
Whoever left these notes were never heard from again during trial. The cameras were never checked, the court did not want to hear from Asia McLean or even checked her letters and did not identify who left those notes. The court really messed up at this point. These were very important sources of evidence that could have helped Adnan not be sentenced to life in prison. Jay Wilds, the second alibi, who claimed to have been with Adnan the whole day and helped Adnan bury Hay's body in Lincoln Park. The story he told the police is not truthful and kept being changed from where he was, the times, and what happened. Here's an audio of his interview with the police.
Why don't you go ahead and tell us what you know about the death of Haley?
Okay.
had left out, went shopping with a friend of mine, an ex-friend of mine, and we had a conversation. During the conversation, he stated that he was going to kill that bitch, referring to Haley. I took it with context. It didn't stand out my head any.
Jay keeps saying and takes irregular long pauses that just does not sound like he's being 100% truthful. Even the police had to get him to redo his interview because of how unclear he was. This timeline shows what Adnan and Jay said they did at each time. Adnan says everything he has told the police before truthfully, while you can see that Jay changed what he said in every interview. Due to these inconsistencies, it should not have been used to convict Adnan. Jay was the kind of guy in high school who smoked weed all the time with his friends. At the time, marijuana was illegal and there would be much more worse consequences if you were caught with it at the time compared to now. In 2019, the filmmakers for a documentary about this case interviewed Jay, and his story was completely different to the one he originally had told the police. He stated that, the day of the murder, he borrowed Adnan's car to buy his girlfriend a present. When he was done using Adnan's car, he returned to school to give it to him but couldn't find him, so he went to Adnan's house, where he claimed to have seen Hayes' body there instead of Best Buy like he had said to the police. Jay also said that Adnan asked to procure 10 pounds of marijuana. Once he got the marijuana, Adnan threatened to turn Jay in if he didn't help bury Hayes' body. He said that they left Hayes' body in a grassy lot rather than buried in a park. There is major lack of physical evidence to prove that Adnan is truly guilty. No fingerprints have been found that links Adnan to the killing of Hay.
As for physical evidence, there was none. Nothing. Apart from some fingerprints in Hayes' car, which Adnan had been in many times, there was nothing linking him to the crime. No DNA, no fibers, no hairs, no matching soil from the bottom of his boots.
The lack of physical evidence is so absurd. The only thing that they have on Adnan is Jay's story. Unreasonable, unclear, and kept being changed. Clearly, this case is very tragic and not complete, although the court may say it is. Adnan Syed is innocent and does not deserve to be in jail for a crime he did not commit. The court and lawyers did not do the job right to identify who really killed Hay, and they also did not protect the convict fairly. The real criminal is still out living in the world, while innocent Adnan is living the rest of his life in prison for a crime he did not commit. But Adnan is not trusted by his story in order to be a free man. The alibis, Asia McClain and Jay Wilds, and the lack of physical evidence all prove why Adnan Syed is innocent and not guilty.